Hi everyone, I'm really excited to be with you to talk all about boundaries. So boundaries are a key tool that I teach to help beat burnout. So there's a reason that I don't start with boundaries. So this is actually the fourth video in the series. And the reason is that boundaries can be so much easier when we ourselves have clarity. So it takes self-reflection, it takes clarity, it takes intention to have good boundaries. I sometimes think it's like probably 90 to 95% of having good boundaries is doing that work to get yourself clear. So today we are going to talk all about boundaries. We're going to talk about scripts, we're talking about strategies, and also just some tips where people misstep with boundaries that might help propel you if you are feeling stuck in this issue in particular. So what I find where people get stuck with boundaries is first maybe not having a clear understanding of what they really are. So boundaries are really just a tool to help you have parameters with how you choose to spend your time and your energy and your emotions, okay? So boundaries don't have to be walls that you put up. They're really parameters that you can help guide yourself and other people for having good interactions and also just to help you achieve those priorities you have in your life. So that's why it's so important to be clear about what you want. You can't have good boundaries if you don't really know what you're trying to achieve with them. Okay, so that's the first 3 videos of this series really talk a lot about working on your self-reflection, working on clarity and intention, and working on defining your own definition of success. Those are necessary processes to go through. So I encourage you to download my Beat Burnout Blueprint and work through some of those questions and exercises, and also watch the videos that go along with them. Okay, but boundaries can exist even without talking about it. So one of the things I wanted to go through today was just to talk about what is a no-talk boundary. How do you do that? A lot of people, they think boundaries are something you have to say to other people. And in fact, what I find is boundaries are often something, once we're clear inside, we don't need to say to anyone. Probably a few years ago, I was really realizing I was doing a lot of coaching with clients on how they're going to talk to other people about their boundaries. And what I realized is that I had gotten to a place with my process where I really don't feel like I have to articulate my boundaries that often. And then looking around other people that I thought had good boundaries, I noticed they also, you don't necessarily hear them verbalizing it. There's a lot of actions that happen that are guiding people on how to interact with them without them having to sort of set this firm limit with other people. So a no-talk boundary is something that you do that allows other people to have a good boundary with you, and for you to also achieve this. Our goal in Beat Burnout is to figure out how to kind of manage your work and your energy so that you're not so exhausted that you can't live the rest of your life, that you can't go out and do what you want with yourself. So no-talk boundaries. Let me give you an example. So if you have clarity on what you want to do with your time, for example, and what your priorities are with your time, what I would encourage you to do is use your calendar as a tool. So what I have people do, they'll say, oh, Hannah, I have some important projects, but by the time I get my emails done and people interrupt me, I don't have the energy to work on this project that's really important. And I say, okay, well, when do you have the most energy? I want you to go into your calendar. I want you to block off that time. That's when you should be doing that project. And then you just, there is a communication piece letting people know, hey, this is the time I work on my project. But you have to decide first. You have to decide that's important, and you have to use your calendar as a tool to block it off. You can also block off when you come into work and when you get out of work. Now, the thing with boundaries is, I know we all have encountered people who are really inflexible, right? That they have hard limits. If you really are clear with yourself and what you're trying to get out of your day, what you're trying to do with your work, and how you kind of fit that in with the rest of your life, you can have flexibility. But I would start with blocking off times that generally you're not going to be working, or periods of time in your day that you are devoting to things that are important to you, to your work, that require your energy or your highest skill set. So that's where the clarity within you, you can use your calendar to block those things out. Now, here's what it might look like. So maybe someone asks you to meet during a time when that's like your major project time. So they could say, oh, Hannah, can you do 10 o'clock on a Tuesday? And I know actually Tuesday is the day I work on a lot of my my content, the things I really want to think about. So if someone asks to meet during that time, what I might say is, I might just counter propose. I might say, oh, what about Wednesday? What does that look like for you? You don't need to always explain your thought process. You could just counter offer. And if you look at your calendar, that's just going to prompt you to do that. Or you could just let people know that doesn't work great. What else? Let's see if we can find something else. Okay. So that's where it becomes very matter of fact. Your calendar matched with your clear goals and intention is going to prompt you every time to have a good boundary that you don't necessarily need to explain to anybody else. Okay. So let's see. Let's talk a little bit about boundaries you do need to communicate, that you do need to talk about. So one of the barriers I found to having good boundaries is either people are not clear, they don't have an intention, they don't know what they're trying to achieve with their work or their life or their boundaries, right? So that's a major point. Sometimes people do have that clarity, and what's really getting in their way is guilt. So I want to talk about that for a minute. If you don't have good boundaries because you feel like setting a limit with someone is selfish, I want you to really listen to this next part, okay? So my belief is that when you let other people know what you need in a clear, straightforward fashion, that's not being selfish. That's being self-responsible. You're being self-responsible because only you know what you're trying to do with your day or your energy or your emotions or what you're even trying to achieve in your work. So while you do need to consider your needs along with other people's needs, you speaking up, you letting people know what works and doesn't work is being self-responsible, is contributing to that conversation. Because if we don't do that, really what happens is this comes out sideways. What happens is we're expecting other people to somehow intuitively read our mind and do the things we want, that they should somehow know what to do, and we're mad when they don't. That's why this really isn't a selfish act to just be clear about what works for you and what doesn't and be able to communicate that. You're being self-responsible. You're letting people know something that they can't know otherwise, okay? No one knows what you need, okay? So here's how I break this down. Your responsibility in an interaction, okay, whether it's your work and someone's asking you about a meeting or scheduling, or if you can work late or do a special event, your responsibility is to be honest and to represent yourself and to clearly and civilly respond, okay? So if someone asks you a question, just respond in an honest way. That's your responsibility. It's not your responsibility to manage how the other person is going to feel about what you say. If they ask you to do something that you have a choice, you get to honestly respond. They can feel how they're going to feel. That's up to them to manage those feelings. Now, you're being asked to do something in the context of your job. That's your role that you're being paid to do. We don't always have a big choice. But we could say, hey, I understand that that's something I'm being required to do, but that isn't, it's outside the norms of my business hours, or, it does have a consequence on other priorities I have in my life. You could say that. There are ways to just indicate to people that they are, even if they have the authority or power to do so, that they are stepping on our boundaries. And that can be gentle, that can be polite, but I think it's worth doing. Okay. So let's just say that you're asked, that you have to set a limit, whether it's extra work responsibilities or extra time at work that you just don't have, and that you need to, set the limit. I want to give you some strategies on how to do that, how to say that. Okay. So the first thing is try to use as few words as possible. often I find in working with smart, savvy people who are really responsible is that they use a lot of words when they need to say something that they think other people will be disappointed to hear. So use few words so people don't get confused, and so your message is clear, but you also will be, you'll be seen as powerful, as respectable and respectful, but also someone that can handle kind of a direct conversation. You can model that. You can be a role model for that. So saying something like, it doesn't work for me to have after hours meetings. Or maybe you're a teacher and you're saying, I can't respond to emails during the evening. I can respond to them when I get back for my school day the next day. Something like that. But just keep it clear. I say this every opportunity I can, but don't apologize when you just have to set a limit. If you're not doing something wrong, don't apologize, because it really dilutes the power of an apology for when you have misstepped. But it also doesn't signal to people that you can be manipulated or that you're weak. That apology really begs people to push back on you. So if you're getting a lot of pushback, think about how you're delivering your message and really take that apology right out of there. You can use words to let people know why, like your intention of setting the limit. It could be something like, look, to do my best work, I need to get out of work when I'm not productive and use that time to recuperate and come back and be effective in the morning. That's how I operate best. You can use words to let people know your intention, that you're not trying to be difficult, but that you have a thoughtful reason for setting the limit that you're setting. Okay. The thing that I really want you to take away is that you have to be able to say what you need and set limits. You can't just give endlessly and expect to not feel burnt out. Boundaries are an essential tool for beating burnout. So if this is a problem for you, it's gonna be a problem no matter where you go. Frankly, if you work or even if you don't work, I hear this a lot from people who volunteer. Having that boundary can be really difficult when you're already giving of your time. So this is one to master that will serve you everywhere in your life. So if you are ready to invest in yourself and you want to kind of dig into these topics that I talked about in the videos, from boundaries and exactly how to set them, to knowing what the heck to even set the boundaries around, I'm going to be doing, it's a 6-hour live in-person Beat Boundary Bootcamp. So we're doing a 6-hour program split between 2 Monday evenings, June 3rd and June 10th. It's live in Falmouth, Maine, and it's a small group, so it's limited. There are some tickets still left. I will put a link to that with this post. And I'm happy to talk with you if you're interested, but you want to know more, or you want to chat with me a little bit before you commit to it. But if that's not available to you, maybe you're not local, or you just don't have, or you're just not interested in investing in that way, I really want everyone to leave with this, which is, I talk to people like one after the other all day about work stress and about burnout, and we can feel like we're the only ones. We can feel like we're the only ones who don't know how to speak up, or we don't know how to get a handle on things, or maybe it's just us, or that we're overreacting. That's like a really common concern, and you are not alone. This is an issue that we are all dealing with, and I really want to be of some help to anyone who finds this information useful. That's why I have the free download. The link is in this post. But also I just want you to really know that there is a path for you. All right, I appreciate you tuning in, and thanks very much.